What's going on? Jake here with Uncommon EDC, and today I'm going to be showing the QSP Kali. This was provided by QSP to the Apex Pass-Around group, so huge shout out to both for allowing me to take a look at it. You can purchase this configuration for $73, and as always, I'll make sure to leave a link in the description of the video if you're interested in picking this one up. It is available with several different handle colors, as well as a coated or non-coated blade. The coating on here is their champagne ceramic coating, and I think it looks stellar. I'm a huge fan of the look and feel of this coating, so I would probably have picked this exact configuration had I been purchasing it directly. Now, the knife itself is designed by Keanu Alfaro, and we've seen one of his designs on the channel previously with the QSP Ripley. That one I got through a Going Gear subscription, and was honestly a really nice surprise because it's a little bit larger and a different style of knife than I would typically purchase for myself. Came in a subscription, and I ended up really enjoying it and carrying that one quite a bit. And so, really a big fan of his design so far. One thing that I think he just does really well, at least in the two examples that I've seen, is scaling up the G10. I'm not usually a huge fan of G10. I think it's a little bit boring, but he really manages to class it up by layering it and then using cutouts to really increase the overall look for me. So this one has a thicker base layer of orange G10 and then that thinner layer of black G10 on the top. Cuts into the black G10 with a wave pattern to expose the orange underneath, and I really think it classes up the look without adding a whole lot to the cost. In fact, this is still a pretty budget-friendly knife at sub $75. So big fan of that. He did the same thing with the Ripley with that rip or tear pattern across the handle. That one had the black base layer with the colored layer on top, had green on mine, and so in both cases I just think it looked a lot better than your standard G10. Now as far as the knife itself goes, it is going to be a little bit smaller than the Ripley, but I think a perfect EDC size at about 7.5 inches in overall length and 4.25 inches on our handle. As far as the handle goes, we have this really nice cutout. I like the kind of chamfering there. It gives you a nice ramp into our thumb stud, as we'll see in a little bit here, but nice cutout there. I'm able to get a full 4-finger grip, as you can see. For me, this grip is comfortable. It doesn't have any hot spots really, but it does feel a little bit further back from the pivot than I like to be. I like to be either in line with the pivot or directly in front of it. And in this case, it does incorporate a finger choil with that sharpening choil and then the curve of the handle. And so I am able to creep up a little bit more. And for me, this is perfect ergos. My thumb lands perfectly on the jimping. It just feels a lot more comfortable. I'm able to spread out and get a more relaxed grip. Larger hands will have a little bit of more real estate to work with. And this feels excellent. Again, no hot spots here and just sort of the ideal grip for me. Speaking of that jimping, I think this jimping is pretty solid. I can be a stickler for jimping, and so this one is pretty solid. I think it is being muted a little bit by the coating. I would imagine the non-coated version has even more aggressive grabby jimping. This one's fairly grabby, but if you don't like super aggressive jimping, the coating again might be the way to go because it doesn't feel super aggressive, but it also doesn't really let you slide forward or backward too much once you're locked into positioning there. So I think really nice jimping on this one. We get a 3.25 inch clip point style blade, and it's 3.25 inches of total blade, but as you can imagine with that larger sharpening choil, we're getting closer to about 3 inches in cutting edge. I am a big fan of clip points, especially on modern folders. We see them so much more often on slip joints, on fixed blades, and so I always love seeing them on modern folders, and this one's really nicely executed. Have a full flat grind, nice wedge on that swoop, and then a really fun grind on the front edge of that knife. Not sure if that's really adding anything in the way of functionality, but I do love the way it looks overall. Our thumb stud is out of the cutting path, tucked nicely back here. Very minimal branding on here. We have QSP on the front and our steel stamp on the back, which underneath our coating we do have 14C28N, so great steel for the price point. Those thumb studs, again, I mentioned we have plenty of access with that cutout here. Nice ramp leading into it. It does have a heavier detent, so it requires a decent bit of force to break through, which I actually kind of like. Once you do though, butter smooth. It just comes flying out of there. It is on ceramic ball bearing, so there's no sort of break-in period or anything like that. Going to be ultra smooth right out of the box, which I love. We also have a button lock, which we can use for deployment as well. Very minimal stick. In fact, I had to look for it. It's there. It's very rare that you get one with none whatsoever, and a lot of times that'll work itself out over time, or at least lessen over time. So very minimal noticeable stick to it, and I'll stop talking. You may hear a slight click. So a little bit of a stick there, but very, very light. If you utilize that button for deployment, you're not going to get any stick whatsoever. It'll be completely silent. And so that's usually, again, the case with these button locks, but really well executed button lock as well. One thing that was kind of surprising to me on this one was the weight. So I saw on the website they listed it at 3.6 ounces, which just didn't feel right. I always verify the weight anyway because a lot of times they're off by a little bit anyway in either direction. It's not always like they're trying to make it lighter, but a lot of times I find websites will have the listing of the weight, including the box, or just for some reason a 1/10 of an ounce off. In this case, it was spot on, but I really wanted to verify because it does not feel like a 3.6 ounce knife, and it weighed in at 3.60 ounces. So on the dot, feels a lot lighter to me. So I know a lot of people will see that weight and say it's a little bit heavy for the length of the blade at 3¼ inches. I know a lot of people like to see that 1-to-1 ratio, but it really does not feel off balance at all. Really well balanced, especially again if you're utilizing that finger choil. Also doesn't feel super heavy, so carries its weight well, I suppose. We do have a deep carry pocket clip, which we'll take a look at here. So really nice deep carry pocket clip, just kind of your standard offering there, but it is swappable for right or left hand carry. And nice that they included the plug. And I think that's important on a cutout design like this with that layered G10, because without that plug, we'd just have a giant orange splotch showing here. Would be a little bit more of an eyesore, so smart choice by them to include that plug there. And then of course our lanyard hole sitting here in the back, nice placement for that as well. If you do want to add something to grab onto when you're pulling it out of your pocket, or even just give yourself a little bit more to grip on. We have barrel standoffs, no backspacer of any sort. Overall, like the look of that as well. So one thing, I think I mentioned it earlier, I like that you still get the high vis orange. Like this spine is clearly visible. If you drop this on the ground, still very clearly visible, but it's a lot more muted, less in your face, and just a bright orange knife, which I don't always love. I think it's great to have the high vis knives, but I think something like this is just kind of the perfect, I guess, blend of the two where it's toned down but still bright. Let me know what you think of this knife down in the comments below. Like I said, I'll make sure to leave a link to it in the description of the video if you're interested in picking this one up, but would love to hear your thoughts on it, and I hope you have a great one. Take care.